Hey guys, so I wanted to do a quick video of one of my latest acquisitions. I apologize, I have not been doing a lot of videos lately, but I was lucky enough to get the Blade Show, so that took a lot of time away from the family, and kind of the last thing I wanted to do before and after the show was to be filming videos and things like that. But to tie it all in, this was not a Blade Show acquisition. I actually did not acquire any big knives. I only got one first come first served knife at Blade Show. But it was an amazing, awesome show, and I'll do another video on Blade Show and kind of my scores and all the awesome things that happened. And I had a great time. So if you guys can get out to a knife show, I would recommend it. But the reason why this knife kind of ties in is because this is the exact knife that caused me to go to Blade Show. So I actually remember talking to a friend quite some time ago. Go check out his channel. His name is Tavares Works, and he was telling me about Sharknivco, Edison, and this amazing knife he had called the Ryu. And I was just like, whatever. You know, I have my makers that I like, and you know, unless I put your knife in my hand, usually I'm not overwhelmed by, you know, pictures on Instagram, things like that. Although they're beautiful, you know, I just don't kind of follow the masses and head in that direction usually. Anyway, so the Ryu was a very hot knife, and I did like it. I liked the look of it, but I was not necessarily interested in acquiring one until I saw the one at the New York Custom Knife Show. And my buddy did go to that show, and he felt it. And he goes, "Hey, Aaron, that was the knife of the show. It was amazing. Everything was great. If you did buy one, you wouldn't be disappointed." So it from there, it was on my radar. So I actually kind of feel guilty about getting one because he did love this knife. But from the New York Custom Show, I did some research. I learned about Edison. I learned about Sharknivco, and I looked at all the ones that were out there. And I knew they were a little hard to get. You know, he's an up and coming maker. I mean, he's been doing it for a while, but you know, basically his work was being heavily sought after at that time. And I basically said, well, if one pops up, I'll get one. If one goes on auction, maybe I'll bid on it. And I decided at that point that it would be a knife based on my friend's recommendation that I would acquire without actually holding in my hand, and that bringing Edison into my collection would be something that I decided to do. TKI rolls around, which is in January of 2018, and this knife gets shown up on Instagram, and I immediately fall in love. I look at it and I'm like, I want that knife. In fact, it was beyond that. It was like, I have to have that knife. Well, unfortunately, I had never been to a knife show. I had not thought about going to a knife show, and I wasn't going to the Tactical Knife Invitational, and that's where this knife was. But I decided, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to throw some bids down on Instagram when they pop up. Well, apparently at TKI, they don't do that. They, you know, and rightfully so. These guys pay money to go to TKI. I think it is kind of wonky that you can kind of bid on Facebook or Instagram and kind of bid out someone who actually went to the show. But for that particular show, they didn't do that. But this knife was special. I mean, it was just something that I wanted, and I decided at that point, even if I wasn't able to get it at TKI, I was going to keep an eye on it. And if it ever popped up on the secondary, I was going to buy it. So, true to my word, I just kept an eye on it, and the owner is awesome, or the person who bought it. This was the open bid knife at the Tactical Knife Invitational, and he won it. And he's an awesome guy. I kept talking to him, and he's like, everyone's hitting me up for this knife, and I'm not interested in selling it. But, you know, you just got to persevere, and you got to keep in touch. And obviously, he's a good guy. We follow each other on Instagram. And so after I got back from Blade Show, I just decided to reach back out and say, hey, you know, if you're interested, I've got a nice home for that Ryu. And I was very lucky that he agreed to sell it to me, and here it is in my hands. So this knife will forever be, I'll remember it as being the knife that caused me to go to a knife show. And I will tell you what, that was a lot of fun, and I feel like you know, it kind of adds a whole nother level to collecting knives and another level of enjoyment to my knife collection. But without further ado, let's just look at the knife here for those of you who don't care. It's got an awesome polished Damasteel blade. One of the things that I thought was absolutely amazing, sorry I bumped the camera there, is that there's no hardware, there's no screws on this thing. So I actually like taking my knives apart, but I'll tell you, I ain't taking this thing apart because I've taken my non-flipper flipper down because it makes sense to me, and I'm like, okay, take these screws out, but I can't quite figure out how this knife is held together. So, and not only that, look at the tolerances here. I mean, oh, you can't put a piece of paper in there? Forget a piece of paper. I mean, what's like a fifth narrower than a piece of paper? Because that won't fit down here either. So I ain't taking this thing apart because, you get that pivot out of whack by a half a nanometer, if that's even a measurement, then I don't want this to scrape against the frame. So it is what it is. I'm going to enjoy it, look at it, and flip it, but I'm not going to enjoy it by taking it down, and that's fine. Well, man, but the action is absolutely amazing. So I'm going to try to do it softly because I don't, yeah, you cannot misfire this thing. And not only that, it has no jimping up here. So it's just, your finger just, it feels so nice. You could flip this thing for hours, literally hours. And it feels fantastic. So it ain't going to misfire on you. And just look how, I mean, normally I don't like this, but on this blade it works. Look how free this blade is. I'm just, I mean, you just got to be careful because you don't want your finger there. But this thing is so smooth. I know it's cliche. Everyone's like, this is smooth. But this is the smoothest knife I own, no doubt about it. I mean, this thing is like a, it's almost like the bearings must be insanely smooth here because I feel like the blade just swings extremely fast, extremely predictable, which is nice, with no friction points whatsoever. I mean, the whole travel of the blade is just completely free. So I'm not sure if that's a hallmark for all knives. I know hand-built knives can feel differently, but this particular knife has a very, very insane action and very, very fun to flick. Another thing that I really like, aside from the design and aside from kind of the action, is just how it feels in your hand. It's just extremely well balanced. There's no hot spots whatsoever on it. So I've got a bunch of knives that I like the look of, and I flick, and they're fun to flick, but they have hot spots. Very soft in your hand. This knife is almost like, I mean, you can probably dull the knife and not even have a knife and sell this thing as a fidget bar, and it would be extremely good at that. I mean, it feels very pleasant in your hand. But beyond that, it's a fantastic knife. It came pretty sharp. It hadn't been used, so that's awesome. And I do like it when custom knives, sometimes, the makers, they think you're not going to use them, which I doubt anyone thought that this one would get used. But I like it when they put really nice edges on them, and this one has a very, very decent edge on it. It's got a little bit of a click when you unlock it, if you can listen carefully. So you can actually kind of hear it, which is fine. I know that my buddy was telling me that Ryus are known to have lock stick. So it was actually something I asked the seller about. I said, does this knife have lock stick? And he goes, it does have a click, so I appreciate him disclosing that. But it's the oddest thing. It's not hard to disengage at all. It's very easy to disengage. It just makes a sound. It's very strange. Yeah. So I don't mind it at all. To me, this is a really an example of a nearly perfect knife. And not only that, before I bought it, I actually reached out to Edison, and I asked him if he used any automation at all, which is like CNC or water jet or things like that. And don't get me wrong, I have a lot of knives featured in my collection that used water jet and CNC and different variations of machines to produce the knife. So there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion, but I think it does add to the story. And I think that if there's a hand maker who can make a knife of this caliber with these tolerances without the use of serious automation, of course everyone uses machines to some extent, I think it just adds to the spirit and the soul of the knife. And so when he responded to me, only my right and my left hands, implying that there was no automation used, it just kind of made me appreciate the knife and the build even more. So when I got it finally in my hands, I was just like I said, blown away. And I've got to tell you, the Stan Wilson knives, they're pretty much the best in my collection as far as fit and finish goes. But this knife really is just about rivals, if not better than any other knife that I've handled. And it's like I said, a very pleasurable to handle, to look at, to flick. Just a great knife, and I really appreciate the seller passing it on to me. I appreciate Edison making a knife of this caliber. And I appreciate you guys sitting through me rambling in this video. So the last thing I'll say is, if you guys are on the fence about getting to a knife show, I would absolutely recommend it. It's kind of one of those things that I will look back and really with quite a bit of fondness. There was really no negatives whatsoever. I mean, financially speaking, I was prepared to spend the money. I came back with money in my pocket. I didn't get the knives that I was hoping to get, but that's no big deal because it was overshadowed by meeting so many awesome people, talking with so many awesome makers, and just seeing so many awesome knives. So thanks a lot. Thanks for being patient with me putting out videos, and I hope to meet you guys at the next show. All right, thanks. Bye.